Coming to see us here in Cairns, here in far north Queensland. My name's Richard Henderson, but I'm not volunteering for One Nation. I work for Senator Pauline Hanson. On her behalf, I'll thank you once again for coming. Okay? Pauline is absolutely dedicated. We're going to have a red hot go at this Queensland state election in October. We are going to need all the help we can get, and it is great to see so many people here willing to put their hand up and hopefully able to volunteer for us when the time comes. We're going to need your help. We're going to need your help big time. Someone asked earlier whether they can take photos in this thing, during this event. Yes, take lots of photos with your phones. Post them on your social media accounts. Let them all know that you are proud to be here, like I am. Proud to work for Senator Hanson, proud to volunteer for this party which only just celebrated its 27th anniversary. One Nation has now been part of the Australian political landscape for an entire generation. Pauline Hanson is still standing, no matter how much stuff gets thrown at her. Okay, she's still here. And joining her is our keynote speaker tonight. There is no more hard-working and dedicated servant of the people of Queensland and Australia than Senator Malcolm Roberts.
Firstly, thank you all for being here. Thank you for being awake. Thank you for making the effort for Australia. We are together on the front line of an information war, and I'll start talking about that very soon. I'm going to go off notes because there's so much to cover, and it would take me 3 hours if I didn't have notes. We don't want to be here at 9 o'clock. Well, I'm happy to be here answering questions. The agenda tonight, oh, by the way, one thing Henley missed was that One Nation now has a member of parliament in every mainland parliament, state and federal. You hear me talking quite often about the term uni-party. The uni-party is the Liberal and Labor club. There's no difference in their policies. What they've done is they've tried to call Pauline racist to suppress her, because that's a negative term in this country. They've tried to jail her. They've colluded together to try and jail her. And they jailed her, first political prisoner. So they are terrified of having a second alternative. You've got Liberal, Labor, one alternative. Doesn't matter which one you vote for, they're both the same. Or you've got One Nation. I'm going to talk about digital ID because everyone is asking me to talk about digital ID. We were the first ones to expose it a couple of years ago. We're going to talk about candidate qualities. What do you expect in a Member of Parliament? Because you pay the wages of members of Parliament, state and federal. They're supposed to be serving you, but they're not, are they? Then we'll talk about some core issues: energy, cost of living, crime, housing. Then we'll introduce candidates for the state election coming up. Then Q&A, and I love that session. So ask any question, and then we'll mingle. But it's a night of solutions. First, we've got to get into the problems. And a night of actions. If you think you're going backwards, it's because we are. This is most people's idea of life. Educate, get an education, work hard at school, work hard after school, do the right thing, study, get a job, buy a house, marry, have children. Yeah, here's a lady going. That's exactly it, because young adults are saying they have been sold a lie. That is no longer on their horizon. They're saying they've been lied to. Government has stolen our birthright and our freedoms and our opportunities. And we're in danger of a huge divide and young people feeling hopeless and either apathetic or anarchy. Look at Townsville. Look at Alice Springs. That's what's going on. The fundamental thing is there's a loss of meaning, loss of purpose. And then what the government is doing in this country and at state level is basically the same as TV evangelism. Doom! The world's going to end! We're in crisis. Fear. Sinners, you're all guilty. Save yourself. Send money too. And that's what they're doing. Now, the digital identity is an attempt to number plate people. Everyone in this room will be wearing a number plate. It's not over yet, though. When I went to bed late, I think it was 1 a.m. by the time I got back to Brisbane from Canberra after losing the vote in the Senate, and it got through the Senate, I was pretty despondent. Woke up next morning, went into office, and everyone's happy. And I'm thinking, what's the matter with these people? My team's abandoned. And they said, no, you've forgotten it's got to go through the House of Representatives. Normally it's the other way. And the Labor Party got smashed. And Pocock and others who voted for the Digital Identity Bill got absolutely smashed on social media and through their electorate offices. And the Labor Party is terrified. It's not even listed now for the budget session, the next session of Parliament. We need, so thank you very much for giving me a very positive disposition on that Thursday after the vote. Pauline Hanson's cartoons, do you like them? They're usually faultless, but there are 2 errors in the cartoon the week after the Digital Identity Bill went through the Senate, but it hasn't gone through Parliament because it's got to go through the House of Reps yet. The cartoon said it has passed Parliament. It hasn't. It's still got to go through the House of Reps. And the cartoon said, can we do anything about this? And the answer was no. Well, we can. We can do a hell of a lot about it, and that's what I'll be talking about. So I want to explain why we oppose digital identity and what we can do. But first, what do you want in a candidate? Speak up. Integrity. Honesty. What else? Representation. Our duty is to listen and to speak up and to stand up and push for you. That's what our duty is. We are representatives. We're not dictators. What else do you want?
Work for us, not us for you.
Work for us, not us for you. Thank you. That's really well done.
Transparency.
Our what?
Freedom protected.
Yes, our freedom's protected.
Equal opportunity for all Australians.
That's why we're called One Nation. That's the fundamental reason. What else do you want? Sorry?
Keep the bureaucrats honest.
Keep the bureaucrats honest. You realise who runs Canberra. So isn't the first thing to represent us, as Chris, I think said, what qualities are in representing? What's the first quality before I can represent you? Listening. But the first quality is listen. I need to listen. Then my integrity comes in and working for you. So what are some of the other qualities for representing?
Doing what you said you're going to do.
Honesty, consistency. The next one, service. Focus on serving constituents and the nation or the state. These guys are putting their hands up to serve the state. Honesty, strength of character. What's strength of character?
Someone's quite backing down.
Not being shouted down by the rest of the mob. Exactly. If we believe in something, keep going. Persist. What about courage? To stand up and speak out. Pauline has more balls than most of the men in Parliament. Here's a rare one. Data-based policies legislation. Data-based policies. They don't use data in Parliament. That's why it is so badly run in this country. Objectivity, honesty. Teamwork. Leadership. Not taking lead of the country, but taking lead on an issue. And persistence. Basically, I'm inviting these people here, our candidates, to follow Pauline's lead and just display her qualities. Because I tell you what, she is mighty impressive. So what's the role of a government? What are the 3 roles of government?
Protect our sovereignty.
Protect life, number 1. Protect property, number 2. Protect freedom, number 3. That's the role of government, protecting freedoms. What have we seen in the last few years? Taking away freedoms. And the role of MPs we
Lies.
Sorry?
Continual lies.
That's what we've seen.
Anti.
Exactly. Now the role of MPs, members of parliament, is to serve, how to serve, listen, teamwork, research, get the data and the facts. So let's move on to digital identity. We'll come back to candidates in a short while. Digital identity, as I've said, is an attempt to number plate people. It's not over yet. So I want to explain why we oppose digital ID and what we can all do about it. Who trusts the government? No one. Directors ID, my office, led the way in assessing the digital identity bill. We made videos, spread, and they went around the world because other countries are doing the same thing. It's not just Australia, it's part of the global push. The Director's ID, who's signed up for that? I have. That's right. Now the Director's ID, our office did a lot of research on that, said it should be simple, should be easy, there are only limited amounts of data. My wife and I went through and found heaps of identification needed on it. We mentioned that to our staff and they said, that's beyond the regulations. So it went beyond what was written in the regulations. And no one gave them authority to do it. That's what we're going to see with the whole digital identity. Who introduced the digital identity bill? Labor introduced it into the Senate. Who introduced it in the first place? The Liberal National Party under Scott Morrison and David Littleproud. Correct, that's where it's coming from. Craig Kelly stood up in a party meeting, he told me recently, and completely opposed the digital identity bill in the party room for the Liberals. He's no longer in the Liberal Party. I belted it when it first was revealed as a paper. When it was introduced into the Senate a couple of weeks ago, it was rammed through with not one word of debate. Not one word of debate. None at all. There was the significant amendments moved. Not one word of debate on those amendments from different parties. Yes, shake your head, because that is a disgrace. They gave you the big middle finger. That's what they did. Ran through without debate. Labor, Greens, Teal, Pocock, Jackie Lambie Network, David Vann, a former Liberal, all voted for either the guillotine, cutting the debate, or for the digital identity bill. Why would you hide something from debate? They're afraid to debate because they know the bill's consequences. Now, Pauline and I tried to remove the digital identity bill from the guillotine. Guillotine is where you cut debate. Sometimes it's necessary, but the Labor Party is abusing it, combined with the vote of David Pocock and the Greens. And Lambie sometimes joins them, quite often joins them. So we had to remove the digital identity bill from the cut-off because public must be able to see us working for you, putting your views forward and debating it. That was squashed, entirely squashed. Committee stage amendments, they were squashed. No debate on any of the amendments. Many amendments went through just on a vote, without discussion. So what we're doing is following through on a Senate inquiry. So when the bill came into the Senate, it went to an inquiry by one of the Senate committees. The Senate committee deliberately ignored significant submissions that opposed the digital identity bill. And they just came up with their own conclusions. So we might as well dissolve the Senate and just rely on committees, because that's what basically happened. So what is it? It's a legislation that is a framework for a permanent and expansive digital identity of all Australian citizens. The Digital Identity acts as a master identity, joining previously disconnected government databases that contain confidential data and information. It tears down the silos between the various departments and makes it one massive database with access to all your information.
Great for status, great for people.
Yes.
Get your ID.
Centrelink can see veteran service status, vaccine status, tax return, NDIS record, no privacy whatsoever. Even the Greens said they were very concerned that there are no privacy regulations in this, protection of privacy. And the government said, that's coming, trust us. 350,000 federal public servants will be able to see everything about you and enable them to withhold services unless you comply, if it gets through the lower house. For example, if you make a minor infringement, like not putting in tax return in time, parking fines not paid, social media comments, health data, purchases of all types, and it allows any public servant to access that. MyGov already links driver's license, passport, Medicare card, and vaccination record. And now the digital identity will link all government data related to any one of us in this room, if it goes through. Future amendments of the digital ID propose to pair the government data with private sector data, such as purchasing records. Everything you purchase will be on this database, if it goes through. To create, as they say, a rich digital view of each and every one of us. All records, purchases, finances, health records, travel and movements, social media comments, assets owned, whether or not you have a four-wheel drive. If you have a four-wheel drive, you might not get a house loan or something else because you're putting out too much carbon dioxide. The food you eat, that you buy, education. The University of Queensland had a mandate for students who didn't get the COVID injection. Anything you want to buy or do, they're creating for us, each of us, a digital identity, and it's terrifying because it's basically a return to communist control, feudalism, and serfdom. So I'll get into the specifics. The bill will enable enforcement to access every piece, law enforcement to access every piece of information on your file to investigate, for example, a breach of speech laws. If you don't believe me, they've got the misinformation, disinformation, censorship bill coming. That was introduced this time by the Labor Party. But who introduced it first time? Morrison government. Morrison and Littleproud. Now they can access, if this digital identity bill goes through, access that data with no warrant. No warrant. Freedoms? Government can access your whole file if you say something the government does not like. Even a minor fine like an administrative issue or submitting a tax return late or not paying a parking fine. Attend a street protest, as many of you have during COVID mismanagement. Facial recognition, you'll be arrested if they want to. There's no limit to the social control that the police can exercise. They have your facial recognition, the car you drive, everything about you. And no disagreement with the government will be allowed.
Cashless society.
I'm coming to that. I just want to go through some of the specifics. Now, a lady I heard a little while ago mentioned hacking. It increases dramatically the risk of security breaches because everything about you is in one location accessible to hackers. And who are the worst when it comes to security of data? Big government and big tech. They're the most vulnerable and their portals are open to hacking. Do you trust the federal public service to keep your data safe? No. Most breaches of data security are due to human error. Some scammers deliberately. Okay, next thing. The privacy laws, as I mentioned, to stop them doing these things, have not been written. There's no privacy protection. Just promise to trust us, it's coming. Just like the director's ID, there'll be an unauthorized widening of scope. Next one, trading of your data. The government can sell your data or give access to it to big business mates because they're all linked to the same data. Were you sick on a certain day, David? Did you buy a certain item, Shane? We know you weren't sick because you were driving through a traffic light. And they can do that right now. And the Labor Party enabled it based upon research the Liberals started when the Liberals were in power. Health data will be on it. And then to access your health data, you will pay a fee. Your health data. Your data could be stored overseas, away from Australian legal protections. Now, this is where it gets really serious to the gentleman who talked about cashless. When it's coupled with other bills, it'll form very powerful control. Identity verification, the research for that bill, which went through, Labor introduced it, it went through a few months ago. The research started with the Liberal National Party government. They issued the discussion papers. That's where they can take your facial scan, your biometric data, and link it to you going through a traffic light. Link it to you driving on the road. Identity verification. It's through. It's in. And if you want to you'll give permission to them by, the terms of reference, the terms and conditions that come when you update your iPhone or your bank account or whatever. It'll be buried in there. You give them permission to do it. They rejected my amendment that says every time a camera identifies you, you must give permission. They rejected that. They just want carte blanche. Then the Digital Identity Bill, which the Liberal Party introduced, the misinformation, disinformation bill, which will enable them to track your social media and your comments and either make them lies or harmful. Liberal Party introduced. The new payments platform, many people won't know this, but the new payments platform is something the Reserve Bank has. They might have flogged it off, but it exists now. Every single electronic transaction in this country goes through the new payments platform. Did you know that? No, well it does. Digital currency, as that man mentioned. The LNP introduced that, well they didn't introduce the currency, but the Reserve Bank was researching that, programmable digital currency, when the Liberals were in power. They would be able to track your meat consumption, track your petrol use, track anything that they want to and make it conditional on what you can spend money on. And then it'll be programmed to expire if you don't use it by a certain date. Use the money by a certain date. Why do they want to eliminate savings? Because then you are dependent on them. With savings, you're not dependent on them. And they introduced, Morrison government introduced a cash ban bill to ban the use of cash for amounts over $10,000. You know why? Because then they would make an amendment in a couple of years' time to drop it to 2,000, then 200, then 0. Why do they want to ban cash? Control, exactly. Control. And bank fees. Now I'll tell you how we defeated that. My office worked with the crossbench senators and told them about that. They didn't know it was being introduced by Morrison. Then we got the Greens. Sometimes we work with the Greens. We work with them on anything. We work with them on trying to get Julian Assange free, for example. The Greens have something. We worked with the Labor Party in the lower house. The Labor Party in the lower house combined with the Liberals and the Nationals to pass it through the lower house. Came to the Senate, was sent to a committee. My office contacted grassroots members of the Liberals and the National Party. They put so much heat on the Labor Party senators and the Liberal National Party senators that it was stuck in the Senate committee. And then after a few months, I moved a motion to get it off the books. And we won. We got it through and off the books. But they'll come back in many other forms. The basis of all of this is for things like the 15-minute cities, which will control where you can travel, how long you can be in an area. This is happening in the United Kingdom right now, and in other countries, aspects of it. The same people, World Economic Forum, as this lady said, are pushing that across the globe, all because of the Uniparty. Blue and red, Liberal and Labor. Blue and red, Democrat and Republican. Blue and red, Tory and Conservative. New Zealand, Canada, same thing. It's a bullshit thing if you think the two parties are different. They're there for the pretense of democracy. There's only one alternative in this country, and that's us. Oh, but hang on. The government says it's okay, because it's voluntary. Just like the COVID injection. They were voluntary. You just won't be able to access government data, government services, access funds, travel, education, unless you sign up. But it's voluntary. And the minister can authorize compulsion. They don't tell you about that. But as I said, this issue is not dead, it's very much alive. One Nation has opposed the digital identity bill from the start. When it came into as a discussion paper under Morrison, we made a series of videos that went around the world, my office, and it resonated with people. And a couple of weeks ago, after the Senate loss of the passage of the bill through the Senate, the people roared. They called the Greens, they called David Pocock, bombarded them. Katie Gallagher, the senator who introduced it for the government, the finance minister, introduced it into the Senate. And then she put up a post, a little picture, saying, "Congratulations, we've done it. We've got the digital identity bill through the Senate." She got 300,000 views of her meme. Comments absolutely scathing. Thousands and thousands of comments. Now to 300,000 views, 350 likes. She was hammered. David Pocock was hammered. He posted on X, that he didn't vote for the guillotine. But he didn't say anything about the fact that he voted for the Digital Identity Bill. He's ashamed of it. Labor was shaken during the vote, and after the vote, the House of Representatives was kept back late, but it didn't go down to the House of Representatives where we were led to believe it was going to go. And still no vote, and now it's not listed to the House of Representatives. The Liberal MPs who introduced the bill, when the division was on, I was sitting there on a bench, Pauline was on my right, and Ralph Babette was on my left. And quite often it's just the three of us. All of a sudden I said, look Pauline, the Liberals are coming. And she said, they don't want to be seen to be supporting this bill, even though they introduced it. Can you trust the Liberals? No, you can't. You are the key. We, the people, are the key. Not just in elections, but between elections. We, Aidan down the back in my office, made a fantastic little video with me, just got me to stand up and make a very short video, and told people how to get hold of the Greens, Labor, Liberals, members of Parliament contact addresses. And then call them and call them and call them. And that's what we want you to do. Be firm, be respectful, but be determined. Because this is about keeping our country alive. Because what we want to do is to restore our country for humans to abound and thrive. Australia was the highest per capita income in the world 120 years ago. We're down around 20 and falling fast. Richest country in the world for resources according to the United Nations. And we're around 20. The key to democracy is active citizens holding members of Parliament accountable. And that isn't what's been happening, and the Liberals and Nationals know that, and so did the Labor Party, and we're letting them just take our birthrights away. Why did they bypass the people? Because as representatives, I could not go and engage in the debate in the Parliament and engage and hold the other members of Parliament accountable. Why do they want to bypass your representatives? Why do they want to remove democracy? Why are they hiding it from public scrutiny? Why? Why do they prevent questions? Is it because it puts us on a speed slide to big government, just like communist China? Yes. Is it because big business mates will get data on the people of Australia and Jeff Bezos will be in control? Yes. Is it because BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State are in charge of so many companies? They have the controlling ownership, and they have control of the government. They already own the country. And so yet again we saw the real government coalition in action. Labor, Greens, and Teal Senator David Pocock. They're responsible for most of the guillotines, most of the passage of bills that are anti-Australian. They're protecting each other because the Labor Party needs Pocock and Pocock needs the Labor Party. That's a fact. Jackie Lambie often supports the government. It shows a complete lack of respect for the people, complete abuse of power. But always beneath control there is fear. They are terrified of us. I asked some questions in Senate estimates of the Digital Transformation Agency. Everything they've touched has the same result as something Errol Flynn would touch. They wreck it. They absolutely wreck it. But the problem is that in the process of wrecking the country, there'll be either anarchy or apathy, and the country will go to hell even faster. They cannot manage this. We made that conclusion based upon Senate estimates. And by the way, some of the senior Liberals were not with us in that vote. They didn't want to be seen to be opposing it. So here's the key points of the digital identity. It's a data free-fall. It breaks down the silos between departments, allows the government to aggregate data, your personal data, and sell it. They harvest your biometric data and give police access to it with no warrant. Storage, privacy, and security offshore, if the company that buys the data is offshore. Then you pay to access your own health data. Then insurance companies will be able to raise premiums if you've got a certain condition. That's not the way insurance works. Insurance works on averaging risk. All transactions will pass through the new payments platform, continue to pass through that. Identity verification and services bill facial scans without direct active consent. Misinformation, Disinformation Censorship Bill, which the Liberals introduced. Framework for Social Credit System. What did you hear in the media about this? Silence. Voluntary, like the COVID injections. As I said, feudalism, communism, serfdom, back again. But they won't pull it off. It's just too massive, and that instead will cause anarchy, complete disruption. So what I'd like you to do is to hold your MP accountable, federal and state. Labor and Liberal dominate both, the Uni Party. Sign the One Nation petition. We decided we'd get a petition up after the loss in the Senate. We got 60,000 signatures and rising in the first 2 days. The people are upset and they know about it, so please spread this information. We also are organising a National Day of Protest on Sunday, May the 5th at 11 a.m. in every capital city. You've organised one in Cairns, but that's a local organiser. Good on you, thank you, Gina. Okay, let's cover some of the core issues in this country, and then I'll list some, I'll discuss some, and those I list, if you've got an interest, we'll come back to it. Crime is the big one for Queensland State. We'll come back to that in a minute after I cover some basics. Think about this when we talk about every policy here or every area. Who started it and who continued it? Energy. That is rising. Australia once had the cheapest electricity in the world. We've now got amongst the highest. We're the #1 exporters of energy resources, coal and gas, in the world. And we've got the highest gas prices and the highest electricity prices. Because we can't use our resources in this country. But energy is fundamental because as you decrease the price of energy, you increase productivity and you increase standard of living and wealth for everyone. That's fundamental. That's the lesson for the last 140 years after the Industrial Revolution. So it's vital for human progress. Just 170 years ago, many people in the world were scratching, looking for their next meal. And look at us now. Look at the technology we've got. That came because of ever decreasing prices of energy until 1997. And then energy prices started increasing artificially because of solar and wind and the bullshit subsidies that are going on. The #1 thing that affects our competitiveness in the world as a nation is our price of energy. We've gone from the lowest to the highest. When I was a boy, I was in the Hunter Valley, and I used to cycle to school every day from out in the bush. We lived about 4 or 5 miles out in the bush. And I went past the Curry aluminium smelter. Do you know why the world's largest aluminium company built a smelter in Curry? Because cheap coal and cheap electricity. That's what they wanted. It's shut. Many others are shut. Many others are under threat. And the governments are now subsidising the aluminium smelters because the energy prices are high. Who caused them to go high? The Uni Party, Liberal Labor. I've been asking departments, politicians, journalists, academics for their evidence that we need to do something about it. Not just for their evidence, but for their policy-based evidence, or evidence that would be basis for a policy. No one has given me any. No one. No one, not one person. How can you have tracking of a policy if you haven't got the basis for the policy? How do you know if you're going cost effectively or not? How do you know if you're making progress at all? There is no specific basis for policy. This is not about alternative sources of energy. This is about control of energy. It's about it's about wealth transfer from everyone in this room as electricity users and taxpayers to parasitic globalist corporations. That's what it's about. Because they subsidise solar and wind. The world's most astute investor ever is Warren Buffett. He said famously a few years ago, wind turbines, hopeless investment. Subsidised wind turbines, wonderful investment. Because they get paid regardless of whether the wind blows or not. Who's paying? Who caused this mess? The Uni Party. Think about this. When they can control your energy, as they're doing in this state with controls on air conditioning use, They can shut down, and they can shut down your solar panels on your roof feeding into the grid. And they've done it because they've destabilised the grid so badly they can't afford to have you putting electricity into the grid. Did you know that? Think about this. What did we use for lighting 1850, 170 years ago? Whale oil. Do we use it now? Coal, oil and natural gas are the best friends of the whale. They'd be dead otherwise. What do we use for cooking and heating? Timber. The area of land covered in forests in the developed continents is now 30% higher than 100 years ago. Why? Coal, oil, natural gas. Who introduced every major climate and energy policy? The Liberals. Most people say Labor. No, it wasn't. Labor comes in and turbocharges it. I'm happy to answer questions on that. Okay, let's go to housing and immigration. So cost of energy is going through the roof, and that cascades through every sector, primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors of the economy. Cascades, it multiplies, it builds. Housing and immigration. People are now trapped in the jaws of affordability. People can't afford housing. Immigration is the main cause. 2.3 million people on visas that enable them to work or to be students, but every one of them has a need for a house and a bed. 2.3 million people, plus 400,000 tourists. That's 2.7 million people. That's 10% of our population fighting with you guys and me for a roof and a bed. The pre-COVID levels were 1.9 million. And Albanese sits there in Parliament saying that all we want to do with increasing the immigration is get the pre-COVID levels. Well, mate, you've blown way past that. Who introduced high immigration? Liberals. And which Prime Minister? John Howard. He ramped it up. And then Morrison and co ramped it up even more. Labor Party is now turbocharged. Why are they doing it? I'll tell you why. Because for the last 3 quarters, they've been in a negative per capita growth, economic growth. It's been negative. That means people, the criteria for a recession is 2 quarters or more of negative growth for the whole economy. So when you're per capita in a recession, if you flood the joint with people, you boost your economy. It hides the recession. They're doing that so that Albanese doesn't get the tag of being the Prime Minister when the recession occurred.
Gaming the system.
He's gaming the system. And people in most provincial cities, big cities in this state, and in Brisbane, one of the world's richest states, sleeping under bridges, in cars, in caravans, in tents. How can that happen in this country? How can it happen in Australia? How can it be happening in Queensland? We have a normal vacancy rate of rental accommodation in Queensland around about 3%. It is now 0.7%. 0.7%. There's nothing about it. And these people include working families who leave their kids go to school, and then the kids come home from the car. They're sleeping in the car. Where do they go to the toilet? Where do they have a shower? And they come back from work, and they go to work the next day. These are good people. And they've been fractured by Morrison and the Liberals with high immigration, and by Albanese and Chalmers with high immigration. In February, 100,000 arrivals. That's 3 months after Albanese said, we get the message and we'll tone down immigration. Really? And global governance, the push by the globalists to smash borders is part of the reason. But the big reason, as I said, is to avoid being caught in a recession. And then there's a spillover into social and societal issues. Young people are now not getting married because they can't afford the wedding. They need to save every month, every dollar they have to put into a house deposit. So it's doing that to society. So we're all facing cramped living. So some of the solutions, when it comes to energy, sorry I didn't get through the solutions, is to remove the subsidies and the bureaucracy that is destroying our energy sector. Completely remove them. Once the current subsidies finish, no renewal. We're the only ones who oppose 2050 net zero from the United Nations and World Economic Forum. Chris Foley, 2 days ago, endorsed 75% solar and wind. Endorsed it. The federal Liberal and Nationals are going, oh my God, what an idiot. So we're the only ones that will oppose 2050 net zero. The only ones. And we've done that from the start. Why did we do that from the start? Because we make decisions based on data. So immigration, another problem with housing and immigration is that every day $8.5 million in purchases by foreigners of just by the Chinese, $8.5 million per day purchases of housing, real estate. And we can't buy a house in China, but they can buy houses here. And the federal government, both parties, the Uni Party, have been pushing to hide this repeatedly, making it very awkward for me as Senator estimates to ask questions. Oh, it's no longer with us, Senator, it's under the Australian Taxation Office. Australian Taxation Office doesn't have the details. They both know what's going on, but they're hiding it. So what we will do is we will stop the high immigration. What we will do is stop the foreign purchase of real estate. House prices and rentals to go up, you need not only higher demand, which we talked about through immigration, but also higher supply, so lower supply. And what did the COVID restrictions do? Choke supply of housing. What are energy prices doing to the supply of housing? Choking the supply of housing. So we've got less houses being built and more people wanting them. So that's why prices are going up and are unaffordable. Both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, both parts of the Uni Party want high immigration. Both parties were involved in choking this country during the COVID restrictions. So what we will do is free up the building of houses. Instead of spending money to get headlines, and by the way, the Housing Future Fund, $10 billion. That's not $10 billion pumped into housing. That's $10 billion put into a fund, and the returns on investment from that $10 billion is put into housing. What happens if we have a negative return? Which has happened. So this is a bullshit exercise, pardon the French, but it is a bullshit exercise. How many homes have been built under the Housing Future Fund?
Zero.
None. Why don't we just give the tradies a go? Why don't we just let them rip into it? Why don't we ease the regulations that are controlling the land due to Greens policies, Uni Party policies, United Nations policies? Why don't we clear up the councils so that they can do a better job of improving housing and land? The cost of a house, I led an economic summit in Brisbane back in 2017. Alan Moran is a fabulous economist. He said that the cost of building a house in Houston, Texas, and Sydney are identical. The difference is in the cost of land. How many people we got in this country? 27 million. How many the Yanks got? 330, 360, something like that, million. So what's happening is that we're artificially raising the cost of homes in this country. We're preventing people from getting homes. So another thing to note, and we've got a policy coming up from the state government. The details will be more readily available soon. Did you know that about 45% to 50% of the cost of a house is in tax? Tax. Are they using your tax as well? So let's move on to inflation. The inflation is not caused by Ukraine. They're telling us it is because coal prices went up. Coal prices went up startlingly, which is wonderful for our miners. Coal prices went up, but the contracts for power station coal in this country are long term, and it did not affect those prices. So when the export price shot up to $400 a tonne, the contracts for the supply of coal in the power stations in Australia remained at 80 to 100. They're lying to you. I'll tell you what happens with inflation. Morrison and the Reserve Bank of Australia flooded the joint with cash. When you have excess cash, what happens to prices? They go up. It was artificially caused. And the state Labor premiers, largely Labor premiers, were involved. It's another problem that the Uni Party has caused. Look, I'll come back to these if people want in Q&A, but I want to go on to crime.
Didn't you just cover it? That's organised crime.
People are feeling vulnerable, unsafe, afraid, angry, disappointed and frustrated. Some of the stories I've heard, kids running in with machetes, beating up an 80-year-old man with Alzheimer's, and his wife terrified. How can we live in a state like that? What are the needs? Simple. Number one role of the government is to provide safety, protection for life. Security, safety, comfort, freedom. Save money on insurance policies, which are being ramped up now because of the crime rates. Now this is an area that needs a comprehensive solution, not just a headline grabbing things from the Uni Party. The system is broken. The system is broken. We disagree with Anastasia Palaszczuk and a nodding Deputy Miles at the time, saying there's no solution to youth crime. Rubbish. There is a solution, but you've got to identify the problem. And Christopher Foley is weak. The LNP is just soft and wishy-washy, patronising you, hoping to get into government by not upsetting anyone. The fundamental problem with our society, and young people in particular, but it's not just the young who commit crimes, many older people now are committing crimes because of energy prices, cost of living prices, and an inability to get a house. We know that. But the young people have a lack of meaning and purpose. And what else could you have if you're told every couple of weeks that the world is boiling and we're all going to die? So what we're proposing is many aspects of solving this crime issue. First of all, rehabilitate with consequences. There is no rehabilitation in the current penal system. None. Young people go into jail or into detention and they come out hardened criminals. That's no good. We've had proven camps, Hardyaker boot camp, for example, camps on Mount in Rocky, working, 90% turnaround rate. People stopping being criminals. And they were funded by people who sometimes were supported by One Nation. They lost their funding. We know they work. We know that to free up people, especially youth, they need to be given purpose and meaning. That's what you get on a boot camp. Funding has been pulled. And young boys, adolescents, they don't like being cooped up. Many don't like being cooped up in school. They want trades. And what have we done to our tape system? Gutted it. We used to have fantastic apprenticeships. We also want offenders to make restitution to victims and their families. And if the child is too young and the parent is involved, the parent of the offender is involved, we want the parents to be involved in restitution. When you have consequences, in Rocky, you just walked up to me and said, here's a solution for you. And we have adopted that. The police, at a critical time, have been mandated out because they wouldn't take their injections. They didn't believe the safe and effective rubbish. We've lost good cops because of that.
I thought it was mandatory.
Very good cops. Well, it was mandatory. We want to review the bail laws to keep people safe from hardened criminals and people with severe mental health. We've just seen 2 examples of mental health problems in Sydney. One person attacked in a church, 6 people dead and others injured. We want jail sentences to be more severe for serious repeat offenders. But you know, I've only just come to here. I didn't say harder sentences up front to get your vote. I'm going through the issue. I was involved in a forum at Harvey Bay, and a nurse with 3 people died as a result of a 13-year-old taking a car, stealing a car. I won't go into the details. We had a forum, and the people were livid. The family of one of the dead people was there. You know, I was standing right next to her. She was addressing the crowd, and she just went. She was about to unload on the 13-year-old offender. Instead, she turned around and said, "I'll always remember this." She said, "That 13-year-old boy is a victim too. He's a victim of the destruction of our society." And so she's not saying go easy on him, not at all. We're not saying that either. But we have to understand what's causing these kids to do this, what's causing adults to do this. So we have to be, but we need serious, more severe jail sentences for serious and repeat offenders. We've got to stop the judges from catch and release. We will come up with a system of lawyers and judges to review court decisions.
What is their accountability, mate?
Exactly, that's why we want a review system for judges. When it comes to the community, we want to rehabilitate and restore the community, not just criminals. That will need politicians to tell the truth. That's probably the hardest thing to get from this lot. Stop saying lies like the world is going to end when it's not. We need faith in community neighbourhood watch. Instead of taxpayers grovelling to their local MP to get money, because that's how they get money for neighbourhood watch at the moment, what we want to do is put a bucket of cash available for communities to restore neighbourhood watch, fully funded, encouraging and rebuilding the community. We want to fix the basics. That's the main solution. That means fixing energy. That means fixing housing. That means fixing infrastructure investment. That means fixing inflation, just by telling the truth and doing simple things, not headline grabbing. Giving Townsville a chopper will simply enable them to catch more criminals and feed them back into the system and make them hardened criminals. The chopper is not the solution. The society is the solution. Everything is connected. So there are many other areas that I can discuss, but
Creating division.
righto. Now I'm going to hand back to Hendo, and Hendo is going, yes, they are creating division in society. That's how you keep the population down. Hendo's going to introduce the candidates.
Thanks very much. Can I ask for a hand for Stephen? I've been in politics a long time, a very long time, more than 15 years. I've been working for members of parliament in more than one parliament. I have never come across a member of parliament who's more across his brief than Senator Malcolm Roberts. He works really hard. And before I introduce our candidates, I'm going to reiterate a couple of things that Senator Roberts said. When we're talking about going backwards, we mean it. The next generation of Australians will be the first one in the history of this nation that will face lower living standards. First time ever. And we can see it everywhere. Tents in parks, people sleeping in cars, people sleeping on the streets. Homelessness in Queensland has risen 22% in just the past 5 years. Fixing the problem is going to take a lot of work, but you do it by principles. You don't govern for ideologies. You govern for the people. One nation puts Australia and Australians first. And on this election in Queensland, we will put Queensland and Queenslanders first. I'd like to introduce you to some of the candidates who put their hand up to actually do this. So, from your left, representing us in the electorate of Cook is Peter Campion. Representing One Nation in the seat of Hill is Brenda Turner. Representing us in the seat of Barron River is Peter Isons. Representing us in the seat of Mulgrave, Michael McInnes, ladies and gentlemen. Representing One Nation right here in Cairns, Gina Court. And last but not least, representing One Nation in the seat of Hitchinbrook, Rick Dorber. I've spent the entire day with our candidates talking about how to be candidates, I guess. They're all great people. What I can tell you right now is that they are dedicated to the One Nation brand and the One Nation team. And they are dedicated to doing the absolute best for their communities, putting Queensland and Queenslanders first. They have Pauline Hanson's absolute confidence. I wanted to say that as well. Thanks very much. Now, we will let Senator Roberts take the floor again. He will take your questions and let's have a discussion about some of the issues that matter to you.
Thank you, Hendo. The first thing I want to say is I want to thank the candidates for putting up their hands, because democracy depends upon having good candidates and good people right across the whole community, holding MPs accountable. I also want to pass on some advice. Be like Pauline. Just speak up, stand up. Always tell the truth and get on the ground and listen. Get on the ground. We need to stop the uni party, so that there's only one alternative to the uni party, and that's One Nation. Before turning it over to Q&A, I want to hit a really important point that many people don't see. I want you to celebrate our humanness. Everyone in this room, everyone is here because someone cared. They might have done a great job as a parent, they might have been able to do better, but they're here. You're here because someone cared. When a foal is born, it drops out of the mare, it's on the ground, it staggers around for about 20 minutes, gets to its feet, canters for a little bit, and then puts its head down, joins the herd and chews. 20 minutes. How long did it take you to join the herd? How long did it take me to join the herd? 3 years of completely helpless. So I know that humans care because you're here tonight. You wouldn't have survived if someone didn't. Humans also have a huge ability to love and the ability to think rationally. Sometimes I wonder. But Thomas Jefferson, arguably the strongest founder of the United States, said that humans are wonderful, but the biggest problem with government is you have some people trying to immediately corrupt the government. Happens everywhere, every time. So I'm not saying humans are perfect. And then emotion bypasses reasoning, and these people in Canberra use emotion, the media uses emotion to fool us all, to cut off our reasoning. And they weaponize our most valuable human qualities, care and compassion. They weaponize it against us. The underpinning assumptions behind just about everything the globalists do, and the Uni Party does, is our main priority in life has to be to protect the planet, protect the environment. Now, who here wants to destroy the environment? No one. But is that our main objective, to protect the environment? It's not. But I'll show you how we're doing that anyway. Protect the environment, put the planet first, which is saying put humans second. That's what they're saying. At fundamental basis, they're saying humans don't care. They're saying that repeatedly. And then they turn around and say, as Susanna is agreeing here, and in your old country, America, and in Australia, in the West, they're saying, let us govern for you. And very few people say, but hang on, you're a human too. You told us they don't care. So the globalists want to impose themselves on us. And that's how they get into the roles they're doing, through lies. But I want to ask you to think about something else too. For human civilization to be in existence in 20, 30 years, don't we need to protect the environment? And for the environment to be healthy, don't we need to protect human civilization? Sorry? Farmers are the key to protecting the environment. They're fundamental because when a farmer retires, what does he or she do with the land? Pass it to their kids or sell it and go and buy a block on the coast or wherever they want to retire. That's their superannuation. The best person for looking after the land is the farmer. And yet what do they tell us, these globalists and the Uni Party? The farmers need to be controlled and we'll regulate them out of existence, and that's what they're doing. So the natural environment requires civilization. If you're scratching around as humans were 170 years ago to get your kids the next meal, you don't care, pardon the French, if you shit in the creek. And I don't blame you. But if you want to stop shitting in the creek, then you need to get steel for water pipelines, concrete for dams, and all the other things we now take for granted to get potable water and a good sanitation system, and everything else that goes with society. We have a smaller human footprint now than we've ever had. This thing here, that has how many thousands of songs on it? We used to have a record player in stereo for that. So we have to be recognizing that humans care once they're awake. I think our underpinning assumption should not be to protect the environment, it should be to have humans flourish. What do you think? Isn't that it? And then when humans flourish, we protect the environment. So when I exhale air, my carbon dioxide ends up in the tree. The tree gives me oxygen, which ends up in my lungs and my digestive system, and everything else about that. The trees are my lungs. And I'm the tree's lungs. So what we need to do, this is recognise, as I said right in the start, this is a battle for humanity. We are under attack. It's a psychological battle. If I take a gun to Rick's head, everyone in this room would see that I'm controlling him. How have they done this? They've indoctrinated the kids until they become teachers who then feed back into the indoctrination system. And you can't even see that we're being controlled.
You didn't know that Rick has got a black belt from origami.
So we need to work on restoring our country. So the solutions I ask you to think about is Pauline and I will continue to work hard. That's just the way we are. We protect you better, and to do an even better job, we need to have more One Nation MPs to join us in Parliament and exercise the balance of power. Look what we can do with 2 senators. We lead the way in so many topics: housing, immigration, energy. One Nation alone is out front. Gender bending, we're out front. The distortions of the moral fibre of our country, we're out front. We're already a force. We'd like you to make us stronger. But it's not just about numbers in Parliament. It's about representing the people who've been left out of the political landscape, which is most people in this room. Standing up and speaking out. Misinformation, disinformation conference that One Nation organised to put that front and centre, now that the Labor Party is scared of bringing it back. The cash bank bill, which we defeated. One office defeated that, with the help of many, many people. National Day of Protest coming up. The gender dysphoria laws. We've now got that completely turned around so that people in the street are now talking about it without feeling condemned. We've now got the doctors saying it's wrong. Affirmation is wrong. Because we spoke out about it, and Pauline and I led the way on that. Family law, housing and immigration, energy. So what I'd like you to do, please, is to scrutinise our information at these forums. Don't just believe it. Investigate it. And then share and spread it if you agree. Get involved. A democracy needs citizens to be involved. Hold MPs accountable. Visit their offices and don't take no for an answer. Keep coming back. Call them. Write in paper letters, not emails. They don't take any notice. Vote. Volunteer to support these fine people. You need volunteers for handing out how to vote cards, for scrutineering, for knocking on doors, getting the word out. Support these candidates. Join My Nation if you want to. Join My Nation. And above all, stop voting one for the Uni Party. When you vote One Nation number one, you're effectively getting 2 votes. Increasingly, One Nation candidates are becoming one of the 2-party preferred, which means we're at either second or first. Just about in. We've already got a member of parliament in every parliament in the mainland states and federal. But if the One Nation candidate doesn't get up to be one of the top 2, then if you're terrified of Labor and you think that Liberals might be a little bit better, then you can put Liberal ahead of Labor, so you've got a second vote. We'd like you to think of, first of all, about voting for One Nation first. What the Liberal and Labor Uni Party do is they say, vote for minor parties is wasted. Because they depend upon your vote. That's what they're doing. They're scaring you, saying that our vote doesn't matter. Rubbish. It does matter. And that's the only way we get in, by putting One Nation top, number 1.
And use a pen when you're voting.
Yes, use a pen when you're voting. We talk about that in Q&A. But the other thing I'd like you to do is to be very, very positive and proud of our species, humans. Everyone in this room has been bombarded with generations of brainwashing about how bad humans are. It's rubbish. Some are. You know, we've had our Stalins, our Hitlers, our Morrisons, our So be wary of the anti-human control freaks. Stand up to them. But awake to the good in humanity and the good in every one of us. I'm open to questions. If that's the first question we got, ma'am, is that about elections?
Sorry.
Steal the ball, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
What's the name?
Margaret Braxton.
Alright,
I
okay,
found you
Margaret.
last time. Look, yeah, this is actually for my son who's down in Dubbo who wants to get on board too. But anyway, he was asking, does One Nation or can One Nation actually get enough seats to run government? If we actually did go that far, how would we go? How to go, like, running government? Any plans there?
It would need a massive increase in vote for us to get government. So I don't think that's realistic yet.
Not yet?
Long term, quite likely.
Yeah.
Because more and more people are coming to us from the Uni Party, okay?
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can have enormous impact just by having more members of parliament. That's the first thing. We've got more people speaking out like Pauline and me on the basic issues. The second thing is, if we get to the balance of power, where one of the 2 Uni parties needs us to get their bills through, then we can say, we will support you if you take the brakes off gender dysphoria, if you stop affirming gender mutilation, if you stop doing this, if you stop doing that. Now, Pauline and I don't horse trade, but we make sure that people's basic issues are looked after. So that's the first step. More members of parliament, first step. More members of parliament is sufficient to have a balance of power, and then ultimately government down the road. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Hi, my name's Eliza Dupree. I'm Commission. I've been covering the coast of Bed, so I've been in Brisbane a lot. Because I because I've got a daughter down there that's not well, but because I've been up and down the coast, my main concern is food security. The fact that 9,700 acres of farmland was bought by Mr. Gates, and that was in Gatton. That's not even discussed. That's not even people are just not aware about it. The same thing's happening. We had changed to the laws as far as the amount of property that is being sold that went from 3 million, I think, to 3 million, and that was done by Penny Wong. Nothing is, that was on the back pages of the newspapers, and nothing was said. We don't hear enough of all this stuff. We also have a plane that is flying between Cairns, Normanton, and Port Douglas, funded by Mr. Gates, and it's doing climate research, and it flew us right down to Lockyer, not Lockyer, to Hinchinbrook and up, and it's been surfing. What is a foreign plane funded by a eugenist doing over far north Queensland, and why is this not being discussed? We need to become a lot more vocal, and there are facts there that is not even being discussed by the media, and it's not even being discussed enough by our politicians.
Okay, I'll discuss it. First of all, Bill Gates is another predatory, parasitic billionaire, making money off COVID injections, forcing them onto people. Bill Gates, early this year, had a meeting with Anthony Albanese. Afterwards, they both made an announcement as to what they discussed. They discussed, let me see if I get this right from memory, energy, farming, food production, health, the environment, and there was one other one. Food, energy, no, health. Anyway, there were 5 items. They agreed on 5 items. Bill Gates has no qualifications in any of them, but he has conflicts of interest, serious conflicts of interest in all 5. Why are we discussing things with him? Why are we selling land to a parasitic foreign predator? That's the first thing. The second thing, you mentioned food security at the start. Very, very significant to us. The governments of the Uni Party are hollowing out the bush. They're making it very, very difficult for farmers. They're stealing their property rights, and I can go into more detail if you want on that. Stealing our property rights in many, many ways. They're restricting what farmers can and can't do. And who's the best person to look after the environment and the farm? The farmer, because they suffer if they get it wrong. So yes, we are very concerned. I've made speeches in the Senate showing that food security is an issue and showing that they're hollowing out the bush. I've spoken about it many times. So is Pauline. Pauline was doing it back in '96. So we do speak out about that. We try to raise the awareness of other MPs. Foreign plane. Well, there are many foreigners that come in here in their planes. If you're wanting to talk about chemtrails, I'm happy to answer that later. But yeah, I'm happy to answer that. But we can't stop foreign. We can stop foreign planes, but we shouldn't stop foreign planes. But we should ask questions about what they're doing down here. So thank you for that question. Who's next?
Paul O'Connor is my name.
Paul?
81 going on 82. I just retired last June as an accountant. Are you aware that there's a company in Perth? It was originally founded by Ralph Sarich, and it was called the Orbital Engine Company, right? And you know what they do now? They sell drones through a contract with Boeing to the United States. Why aren't we getting in touch with them and finding out where's our defence minister going to Orbital and saying, we want drones, can you sell us some?
Very good question, Paul. The Defence Minister goes over to the time because the Deputy Prime Minister and Anthony Albanese spends a lot of time overseas. That's fact. I asked Penny Wong a question about that in the Senate. The questions on, she couldn't work out what I was getting at. But that's a very good question. Why don't we support Australian industries, Paul? Thank you for your question. Thank you for standing up for Australia. One of the things, there's a wonderful book, people might be interested in, written by Clinton Fernandez called Sub-Imperial Power. It details how the United States basically controls a lot of our policies, not just defence, but manufacturing and the use of our land, the United States.
Pine Gap is a good example.
Who's got the microphone?
Yes. Pine Gap is a good example of that was the drones. Yeah, and Pine Gap is a bit. No, it was black.
My name's Stella Motterson, and
Stella, is it? Stella?
Delma with a D.
Delma.
I was just wondering, is the government ever going to take notice of Lyme disease and recognise it here in Australia? Because there's so many people with it. That's just a health part of the other.
Very good question. I thought, and I was completely wrong on this, I've been corrected, that Lyme disease was due to ticks in America. It's here in this country as well, we know that.
They released here in Australia. Yes.
Linda Reynolds is a Liberal who has been pushing inquiries into this. We have asked that question too in Senate estimates. They don't seem to want to answer the question, Delma. So, but we have raised it as an issue, and it's something we push. But it's down the pecking order for us because there's so many other issues that we are trying to push. We can't do everything at once. But I hear you, and we have been pushing it. And we've talked with Linda and someone else, can't remember who it was, about pushing that together.
My name is Errol Andrina.
Errol? Errol, yes.
Some years ago, I worked in the police in New South Wales. I got out of that because I didn't like it, because of the orders. I got into security in Brisbane, and I worked with a dog. I worked on Kingsford Station, which is now, and there was a young gentleman there, and the three trains went through, and I had to go and ask him to leave the station. And he said to me, no. I said, well, I'll have to call the police. He said, call the police. What for? He said, I've just got out of jail and I want to go back. I went, what? I said, where do you want to go back? He said, I feel safer. Okay. And what about the jail for the politicians who with treason and like treason, they're doing that. Treason under the law. So, and they won't release any of that. And genome engineering. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. First of all, jail probably is safer for some people. But secondly, thank you for your question, Errol. The 28 Battlefield. A senator, prior to me getting into the Senate, discussed that in Senate estimates, okay? So when I got into the Senate, I started calling and trying to track him down. And I won't mention his name because I'll tell you why I won't mention his name in a minute to protect him. But I eventually got his number and called him, and he said, oh, at last, a politician who wants to talk about it. So he came to my office in Canberra to discuss it. By the way, I've since found out George Christensen also tried to track him down and had a conversation with him and put forward the same conclusion. There's a young fellow up the back there, Aidan in our staff. He's done a lot of research on this issue. He's also found a fabulous website that has done the research on it, and it's come to the same conclusions, all right? Now, when I got that senator, I asked him to come to the office. He volunteered to come to the office in Canberra. We've got a barrister in our office. The three of us sat down and talked broad terms. He brought a suitcase full of material, little, the kids' portals. He brought one there. And so my barrister and the senator, the former senator, made arrangements to get together in Canberra and spent the day going through that information. The barrister said, at the end of the day, there's nothing in there that's useful in a court. Nothing. There's the list of 28. There is a list of 28, but it's not signed. It's got no credibility to it. We mentioned these conclusions to the former senator, and he said, I agree with you. Then I said, how about we make a video and just allay people's fears. By the way, pedophilia is a problem. I'm not denying that. And it is a problem in senior judges, senior MPs, senior police, senior bureaucrats. So not denying that. But you've got to address a problem with facts. And the facts aren't there. And the former senator acknowledged that. Now, he didn't want to make a video with me because he said he's trying to let it die out of his life because he's been under threat of defamation and so on, okay? So what we said to him, and we've taken it up with the Attorney General, the current Attorney General, the National Anti-Corruption Commission that's been invoked at Federal Parliament, we said to the Attorney General, we'd like, in terms of reference, widen so that it captures those four groups: senior politicians, senior judges, senior police, senior bureaucrats, not just politicians. And he said, We won't do that now, but he'll come up with a separate National Anti-Corruption Commission for those people. Okay, so the politicians are captured right now. So it's a real problem, but the 28 is useless. The Wood inquiry was a state inquiry. All right, so the facts, that's gone out of control, that 28 story, the 28 list is out of control. It's been exaggerated and pushed around. But if you go to my website, it'll have what we've developed as the facts on that, and so you'll see it for yourself. Now, geoengineering, boy, oh boy, here we go. For the last 18 months, 2 years, I've had an open invitation to people to put evidence of chemtrails or any geoengineering on my website, and we will investigate it. Before doing that, same guy, Aidan again, had researched, because we get bombarded with questions and emails from constituents, and we try to answer every one of them. But we always get the facts. So we know that there are cloud seeding regulations or legislation in Victoria. But the records show that and they're supposed to, if they cloud seed, they're supposed to log it with the government. We also know that in Canberra or the ACT, they used cannons to do ground-based cloud seeding, all right? So we know it exists. And we've heard that it may be coming back in Tasmania in recent years, but we also know that it doesn't work. And largely it doesn't work. Cloud seeding has been around for many years. So we also have heard people say, well, what about the quality of our water? It's in the rainwater. Well, where's your facts? No one can give us facts. When we ask for evidence of geoengineering and chemtrails, we get people giving us photos of clouds. Useless. But what's disturbing is they think that's evidence. What we have to have is, imagine running a case in court rather. That's what the kind of evidence we need to make a prosecution. We have done our research, freedom of information requests, etc. We've done that. There's nothing going on at the moment. Now people then say, well, what about Lismore? Look at the record rain then. We researched that. The rainfall in 1955 was higher than in 2022 when the Lismore flooded. Lismore, Brisbane. The Brisbane floods were supposedly in 2022 were supposedly geoengineered. They were less than the 1974 flood, which was less than the 1893 flood, which we had 3 floods in one summer in 1893, which was far less than the 1841 flood. These are not new. And people just say, well, it must be due to geoengineering. So you also get politicians lying. President Lyndon Johnson is on a video saying, we are going to control the weather, we'll stop tornadoes. Just more lies from politicians. You believe in this stuff. Then we get scams. We know that there are the climate fraud is a scam. But people milk you guys and us and milk the government, and they're saying, because of climate fraud, because of climate change, sorry, we need to block out the sun. So we want to have some grants to do trials with a plane, and we'll put chemicals in the air to block out the sun. It's all bullshit. And then people say it's coming down in the rain. So we know it's not coming down in the rain because the state and federal governments monitor the water quality in rivers, creeks, dams, lakes. There's no change. Now that's not to say these people won't be trying things, but there's no evidence of it happening. And people say, oh, you're just dodging it, you're just a globalist, you're just a Freemason or whatever it is. You know, that doesn't help. Because if I attack something, I make sure the data's there first, because if I don't, then all my work on climate, all my work on COVID, all my work on everything else gets tarnished. My credibility is destroyed. I will chase anything. I'm like Pauline. I will chase anything. Give me the data. So there's no evidence of chemtrails in this country since 2016 at least, because we've gone back that far. The Civil Aviation Safety Authority has to log every flight, and they have to log every permission for discharging chemicals in the air. They haven't got one log. We've checked with freedom of information. So there's nothing to it.
the alternative, but to go away from alternative, to go to alternative media and away from corporate media.
The independent people media, the truth media.
That's all the truth media, yeah. And we have to sift through a lot of rubbish to get to the truth. And sometimes the truth is not obvious. And you have identified the
What's your name?
Alex Condi, sorry. Ex-paramedic, ex-social worker, and now a bankrupt because COVID took my business as a tour guide. I appreciate how you've gone through.
Hang on, Alex, I've got to interrupt there. I always do. COVID did not take your business. Government stole your
took
business.
it. The COVID scam took my business. Yes, thank you for the record. And if I can put some context into my question, I appreciate how you've gone through the Maslow pyramid, talking about our food, our housing, our work, the work that is disappearing, and also you go up the pyramid and you identify the Uni Party, but I don't see that as being the peak of the corruption. I see the banking cartel being the peak of that pyramid of corruption. I see the bureaucrats that they bribe and put into place because they give them a policy and they can't divert from that policy. I see a lot of the political parties being completely manipulated into toe the line, and at some point or another they throw in another party or a pretend party to let us think that we actually have an option. And we haven't had an option. And I would, as much as a question, I would like to propose that the Reserve Bank of Australia be nationalised, that you have control over the reserve of not you, I beg your pardon, that we, the Australians, have control of the Reserve Bank. We set the interest rates and we stop politicians from taking foreign money as donations and stop politicians from taking more than $100 from each and every one of us. And unless we go that way, Malcolm, and I do appreciate your work, but I don't see a solution while the Reserve Bank is owned by people who we don't know, and we can't put the people that we choose in the board of directors. So could you please take it to your party, to your boardroom, discuss it, and come up with a policy to get rid of the private banking sector in Australia, who is destroying our politics because they are bribing our politicians. And our health system, and the pharmaceutical companies and all the rest of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, Alex. I agree with everything you've said, except for one thing, and that is that the Reserve Bank is not privately owned. It's an instrument of Australia. But the Federal Reserve Bank, the daddy or the mummy of all central banks, is privately owned and controls a lot of the money supply around the world. So you are absolutely correct. The globalist parasites are above the Uni Party. I normally talk more about the globalists, but I just wanted to make that point about the Uni Party. They're not in charge of this country, because you are correct. The globalists who run the Uni Party, they're in charge of this country. You look at the banking system. Oh, by the way, we already have done our work on what you're saying, and I became aware of it. There's so many things I could say here. we have got part of our policy is a People's Bank, just like the former Commonwealth Bank back in 1911 through to 1923.
Well, that was solved.
It was dismembered, it was denackered, and it was flogged off, like kidding. But it was brought in place by the Fisher Labor government in 1911 through an act of Parliament. And then after Fisher, it was steadily gutted by Liberal and Labor the whole way through until it was flogged off as another private, public bank. That's all it was. But we want a People's Bank, just like the original Commonwealth, that set us up for our future, set up the foundation of this country, got us through the First World War with no debt. Commonwealth Bank, as it originally was, a People's Bank, was marvellous. There's so many things you talk about. So that's the first one. That's
We wouldn't have a debt if we printed our own money.
Correct. He's absolutely right. Now, the second thing is, I'm going to say something here. I went to the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business to do my MBA, all right? I'm not bragging, but it is the educational institute in the world that has got more Nobel Prize winners in economics and finance than any other university in the world. So it knows its stuff. It's highly respected. In all my studies at the University of Chicago for 2 years, not once did they mention the fact that the Federal Reserve Bank controls the printing of money and is privately owned. Not once. No, they weren't hiding it. They just don't know about it. But increasingly, Alex, people in the United States are waking up to it. Ron Paul did an enormous amount of work on this very issue. He's the only one who's been holding them accountable really well. So it's starting to get out there for the last 20 years or so. It's starting to get out there. More and more Americans are awake to the fact that it's a privately owned bank. We also need to mention that the BRICS nations, what's that? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now is developing an alternative currency. So we're potentially the losing side at the moment, if that takes over, because Saudi Arabia, Japan and others are talking about joining that BRICS outfit. So there is competition for that, and that's probably a good thing because it holds them accountable. Now, if you come back to the People's Bank, the Commonwealth Bank, the original Commonwealth Bank which you're advocating, we agree with you. The reason there are many things that I agree with you on that. The most important reason is the fact that when the Commonwealth Bank was there as a People's Bank, it quickly became the biggest bank because it provided better service, better access, and it provided accountability because there was genuine competition with the private banks. If you look at the 4 big private banks, they control about 93% of the cash in this country. I mean the big money supply definition of cash, not just dollar bills. The 4 main banks, Westpac, ANZ, Commonwealth, NAB. What a name for a bank. NAB. What a name for a bank. The 4 main banks have got 10%, have got a large shareholding in mums and dads, families, right? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Little guy but big voice, all right. So they generally don't take part in votes and shareholders meetings and so on. So they're pretty much silent. Then you've got a lot of superannuation funds owning big parts of the banks. They're similar, or they vote in bloc. So you've got a small group of shareholders that control the big 4 banks. You're loud if I'm talking too loudly. So that small group is about 10% of all 4 of the major banks. Who owns that 10%? BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State, and a few others. So they basically run the 4 main banks. We don't have 4 banks, Alex. We have 1 bank with 4 logos. I've made that point. And some of the federal government agencies have no clue what I just said. Genuinely, they don't know what I'm talking about. Coles and Woolies, controlling shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, etc. Qantas, same. Major companies in this country, same. Now the governments control the bank. We all think, many of us think, I don't think it anymore, we used to think the regulations protect us from the banks. Rubbish. The regulations protect the banks from us. If you're a farmer, any farmers here? Try suing a bank. Deep pockets, very, very deep pockets. The banks are a law unto themselves in this country. So I agree with you, and that's what we're working on. We're pushing a People's Bank. One of the ways of getting a People's Bank in very, very quickly is to copy Japan and New Zealand, which uses the post office networks. Increasingly, the banks are pulling out of metropolitan areas as well as regional areas. They're shutting down ATMs. Why would you shut down an ATM? They don't want you to get access to cash. And their story is they're responding because people don't want cash. Rubbish. They're driving cash out. Bank tellers are telling us that they have been told as a part of their work they must convert people to digital transactions. And so what we've got, why do the banks want to do that? Because they get fees, whereas with cash they don't get fees. So what I've been doing lately is my wife and I used to use a credit card. We now go to the bank, take out cash and use cash wherever we can. If someone lives in Finland that doesn't use cash, we say thanks very much. We'll go cash. It was decreasing, it stopped decreasing, and there's slight increase going on. So please use cash, because if they take cash away, we're done.
This is more of a state question.
What's your name?
Tracy. This is more of a state question than a federal question. I think a lot of it's been frequently covered. I want to address the shortage in nursing and police. And speak up, Tracy. We have deficits like you wouldn't believe in nursing. One day, deficit. Monday night, they have only come back at 20 staff deficit. This is regular. But the government has no money to introduce technology. All of you, when you go to use the hospital, you'll use the IEMR system and you're putting there digitized. The staff don't really know how to use it properly, but they spend millions and millions of dollars on this. And now they're also spending millions of dollars on Pyxis machines, which monitor and track all the medications that are going in and out. Now let me point this out, this is only in our state system because it's not in our private system. The private system still uses old-fashioned systems, even recording the notes are all done on note form. They're not done in fancy computer systems that are statewide. And they don't seem to have the deficits that our state government system has. How are we addressing the spending on all this technical stuff that they say is for patient safety, and it's not really for patient safety, it's for staff monitoring more than anything. And why isn't the money being spent in getting staff on the floor? Because it's staff is where patient safety begins with.
You nailed it. And I can see that you're upset. Is that because people are really suffering as nurses because they're overloaded?
Well, I've been away for 2 years because of the mandates, and I managed to keep my contract. And in that 2 years, I've come back to an absolute disaster in staffing. It was not like this 2 years ago. And people are calling in sick on the regular, they're burnt out, they've had enough, they turn up to work, we're supposed to have a 4-to-1 ratio, and it's not uncommon, we're having a 5-to-1 ratio. A young staff don't know how to step up and say, no, I'm not going to accept it, because they're all still scared from the COVID mandate.
You nailed it again. COVID deceit, the COVID mismanagement was inhuman. They are guilty of homicide. They destroyed core principles, Hippocratic oath and responsibility for care. Destroyed it, took it away from the doctors and the nurses. Informed consent, destroyed. Doctor-patient relationship, destroyed. You don't go to see a doctor these days unless he or she is a very courageous doctor. You go and you get directions that they have been given to tell you. You cannot have health like that. The second thing is that they've destroyed responsibility in individuals for their health. Errol's responsible for his health. I'm responsible for my health. Not some bureaucrat. The other thing that they've done is they've destroyed the health system. So many nurses and doctors and paramedics and police and teachers and fire. Well, then the fire is we've got another story in fire. Fire is one exception. I'm glad you mentioned that. So many of them have left at a time when it was critical we have them. Palaszczuk and Miles were running around the state saying, we've got to have the health system right at the top of its game so that we can manage COVID. What were they doing? Suspending 7,000 nurses. How do you survive like that? They destroyed the system. We've got the highest levels of ambulance ramping ever. We've got the hospitals in an atrocious situation, as an article confirmed a couple of days ago. We've got Big Pharma in control of the doctors, telling them what they're doing. We've got Big Pharma in control of the health agencies. We've got the Therapeutic Goods Administration former head, John Scarrow, I'll never forget his name. But he left the TGA after approving the injections, they're not vaccines, they're gene therapy treatments. And he left them, and where did he go turn up 8 months later? As head of the Medicines, on the board of Medicines Australia, the lobby group for Big Pharma. This is the system. But think about what's really going on. Who's really in charge of the country? Who's really in charge of the state?
World Economic
You are! We are! We vote for these donkeys all the time, and these donkeys in the Uni Party, these gutless, ignorant, stupid people. Now there's some good people in there, but that's largely, when they work as sheep, they are sheep in Parliament, correct, Heather? Yes. So what happens is, they're under control of the Uni Party. Big Pharma, Alex mentioned Big Pharma a little while ago, 70% of the advertising revenue in the United States media. They control the media. The same BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, First State control it all. So that's what's happening, but what's got to happen is the people of Australia need to stand up, hold the members of Parliament accountable, talk to them, call them up, visit their offices, write to them, paper letters, not emails, and hold them accountable. Vote for someone other than the Uni Party.
I just wanted to ask you 2 questions, Lata.
Sorry?
I
Sorry.
want to ask you 2 questions. I'm Natalie Johnson. One was, in supermarkets, I noticed that, we just have to self-serve. It's not to do with CBDCs. And I noticed that they're putting meats in fridges. For the future, we have to put our cards in there and get the meat out. They seem to be going into these fridges in supermarkets. That's what I've noticed, some of the newer ones, doing it that way. And the aisles are getting, like self-service more than, is that to do with CBDCs coming? And another thing is smart meters. They're forcing us to have smart meters. And I've watched on YouTube that they can come 5 meters into your home, smart meters. And also on Maria Z, she showed an African man who said the smart meters, they can take your electricity away, which they do in some parts of Africa, for 6 hours a day, because they say it's bad for the environment. So they take it because of the smart meters.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned when I was talking about energy, smart meters. But also, you don't have to have that. We've got a person in our party's headquarters, and actually he works for Pauline Hanson's staff. He comes from Cairns. He told the electricity company when they said, we want to install something to test, to monitor your electricity, it'll help you. And he said, go to hell. And they went to hell. So you can say no. Now your meat and access to meat, I don't know, because if I don't know something, I say so. But they've been trialling many systems for access to food around the world that sound exactly like that to try and control what they're doing. They're pushing fake meat made out of bugs and insects. They're also pushing fake meat that is generated in a lab, in a laboratory. It's not meat at all, and we think it's cancerous. Gates is funding some of that, we believe. So I think that's answering your questions. But they are trying to control, and yeah, they are trying to control. Where's the next one?
Welcome, Mark. Are you still associated with the Australian Northern Development?
Australian Northern Development?
Yeah, that billions of dollars that have been set aside to developing Northern Australia?
You mean the National Northern Australia Infrastructure Fund?
Thank you, yeah. Are you still involved with that?
I've never been involved with it.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were part
No. That was set up by one of the Uni Party, I think it might have been the Liberals, to fund development in the North, but very little of that money has been used.
Okay, my point is, we have a sugar microphone that's about to close, I believe.
Use the microphone, please.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we've got a sugar mill near Mossman that's about to close. I believe this is their last season.
What was that now?
Sugar mill.
Yeah, Mossman Mill.
Yeah, that's about to close, I believe. This is the last season, reportedly. So, when that mill closes, what are the farmers gonna grow up there?
Wind farms.
My potential solution, Malcolm, is...
I can't hear you.
Yeah, my potential solution, Malcolm, is that, the fund puts in some money, we convert that mill into a hemp mill. Start growing hemp up. Build very, very affordable houses. Put in a fund up there to a factory that builds hemp bricks. We can build cheap houses all through North Australia.
Okay, let's go. We've got about 10 minutes left. Pauline has been pushing medicinal cannabis for a long, long time. When I got into the Senate, I didn't know much about medicinal cannabis, but we've got a very good researcher in our office who's been pushing medicinal cannabis before he got into our office. He educated me. Medicinal cannabis is wonderful. Hemp is wonderful. So I'm not going to have a discussion, I'm just going to answer your question now. So we support that. We've been doing whatever we can to try and modify the state regulations and the federal regulations to make it easier for people to access medicinal cannabis. Medicinal cannabis is not looked upon favourably by the TGA. Why? Because it replaces big pharma. That's why. Another question?
No, sorry, actually. One more question, okay, and then we're going to have to call the formal questions. That gentleman, I'm sorry, has had his hand up for quite a while. So that's going to be the last formal question. However, remember, Malcolm's going to be here for quite a while.
Yep.
So are the other candidates, okay? Really important that you mingle and have a chat to them when you need to, okay?
I just want to ask you a question. We had we had our Prime Minister talk about a lot about democracy when we sent the Bushmasters to Ukraine, but we don't have a minister for democracy and free speech.
Yes, we do. Every citizen in this room is the Minister for Democracy.
Mate, the Minister for Communication, the Minister for free speech and communication, and that what's the other one? The defender of free speech. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a laudable goal, James, but they do what they want to do because the people of Australia have let them for too long. The people of Australia have got to stand up and run our democracy. This country is the first country in the world to have a constitution that the people voted on. Did you know that? And it's the only one. Who can change our constitution? Only you guys. Look at the Voice. Albanese trumpeted the Voice. Almost 70% against it in Queensland. No clue what was going on. Look at the only jurisdiction that supported the Voice, Canberra. There you know, you see what's going on. So the people have to increasingly stand up. That's why we want you to stand up with the e-petition that we've got against the digital identity bill. Just go to onenation.org.au, onenationoneword.org.au. And also come along to the protest that Gina and others are organising in Cairns, 10 a.m. Sunday, May the 5th, correct? And in Brisbane and Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast to go to the protest in King George Square. I'm sorry, we don't know the venue yet. On Sunday, May the 5th at 11 a.m. because we want to show Anthony Albanese that the voice of the people is huge and they are angry. We do not want the digital identity. It'll come back to the people of this country, James, standing up and reclaiming their democracy.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd just like you to give another hand to Senator Malcolm Roberts. There is a man. Before we wind up formal proceedings, I have one little favour to ask of all of you. You'll see a whole lot of signs that were sitting on the seats and stuff. They're all within arm's reach. We need to shoot a little video for our social media to show how many people we're here standing up for One Nation. We'd like you to hold those signs up, wave them, and let's have a big cheer for One Nation in Queensland. first. Okay, so, look, thank you very much once again. Thank you very much on Senator Hanson's behalf as well. We'll be cleaning up a little bit around.
Can we take these home?
Yes, you can. Take them home. Put them up on the fence.
I'm not going to stick on the fence.
Okay, let's put them out there and let's show people what we're made of. Okay, look.